Welcome to the new party. Welcome to the new party. I'm Laura Christine. I have Amanda here and Nick. Amanda, thank you for coming back. Let everybody know where they can find you and about your podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Amanda. You can follow me at Amanda Talks Geopolitics on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Amanda Talks on X. And I do have a true crime podcast that we're kind of winding down called Don't Waste This Effing Podcast, the story of Megan Stoner, about a girl who ran a rental fraud scheme, accused basically every prominent Republican in the country of SA. It's a crazy story. I had something to do with her arrest, so check that out if you are curious.
And Amanda, last week you had a pretty interesting week. You went on a big podcast. So let's talk about that. Unfortunately, we couldn't find the clip. And I want to know why he took it down. But go ahead and tell everyone, the show you were on and what the topic was. Because
last week I debated Cenk Uygur. That's how you say his name, right? His last name, on why people should vote for Trump. It was an interesting thing. It was a 4-hour-long live stream, and then they only posted clips. I don't know if they posted they didn't post mine, so I'm really bummed that I only got the picture. I should have clipped it earlier. But yes, that was a very fun experience. He's not an easy person to debate at all. And I thought we were going to talk about foreign policy, and we talked about the economy. But if you want a strong economy back, I will stand by. You got to vote for Trump. So thank you for mentioning that, Nora.
I will too.
Yes.
And Nick, let everybody know where they can find you and about your platform.
So I have a TikTok at Mr. Nick B. I don't do podcasts. This is my first one. I don't do YouTube, none of that. But maybe after this, I will. I usually talk about current events around the world, America, and a lot of business because I'm an entrepreneur. So I talk a lot about business as well. So that's where you can find me if you have any questions or want to look at any of my video clips.
Yeah, and I mean, he has some pretty good stuff. So definitely check out Nick. He hopefully will be a friend of the show after tonight. So Nick, coincidentally, when I messaged you, I didn't know your background. So go ahead and let everybody know where you're from, because this is the perfect night for that. And it's just a coincidence that honestly that I invited you on tonight, and it was a good coincidence.
I hope so. Yeah. So I'm born in Israel, made in America, as I like to say. And I came to America when I was 2 years old, spent most of my life here, went back to Israel when I was around 14, came back at 17, and been here ever since. That's kind of like my background.
And so did you serve in the IDF?
So I have an older sister and I'm the only son. I went through the draft process, got checked out, everything. I had a draft date for the summer of '98. I was still, before my 18th birthday. And my father would not sign a release form because I was supposed to be on the border, which is considered more of a dangerous job. And he wouldn't. He would allow me just to have a more safe job in the Army. And I told him I feel like I don't want to, that like defeating the purpose, just doing something that I feel that where I come from is about 10 minutes from Tel Aviv. I was born in Tel Aviv, by the way, but the city that I spent about 4 years of my life is called Bat Yam. And that's between Tel Aviv and Yafo. And Yafo is where, I think they call it, I think they do call it Yafo in English. Jaffa, yeah, thank you. And that place is also, it's mostly a lot of Arab Israelis that live there. So I have a lot of experiences with that between the two cities. It was very interesting. Would you let me get into a subject here that had to do with a suicide attack when I got there?
Sure. That's not a problem. Just make sure you use other words. Unalive.
Okay.
It's not as restrictive as TikTok, but it's up there. So
okay.
Go ahead.
So when I first got there, was in '94, and I've never. I'm American, right? At this point, I do speak Hebrew. Again, been my whole life in LA. So I didn't understand the dynamics exactly of, this religious war, we'll call it. I'll call it. So there was an attempt on some citizens of the country, I guess, trying to be politically correct. And one of the young ladies that was unalived happened to be someone that's well known in the city where I'm from. And again, I didn't get that. And there was not an uprising, but a mini kind of uprising, which I was like shell shocked because I didn't see anything like that. This is in my city. Again, I'm from LA. I didn't understand all that. And then obviously the more I lived there, the more I saw, because I ended up going to middle school in Tel Aviv. So you would take a bus, regular bus, not a school bus, every day to Tel Aviv. And in the 90s, they had the most, attacks on those kind of transportations. It was like that era was like the golden era, I guess, for that. And I do remember,
Now,
like,
now, Nick, I got a
yeah,
question. When you say attacks, who was attacking it? Was it terrorists? Like
terror attacks,
what?
Palestinians, Hamas,
Okay.
you
And
know.
I'm asking these questions not to be like rude or ignorant. I
No,
just want
I
to
would love
understand
for you to ask
because
questions.
yeah, thank you. So I appreciate that because I truly don't know what's happening. And I just want to be fully transparent. I'm part Arabic. I'm half Moroccan. So I only know so
Oh,
much.
That's
So
interesting.
but again, I don't have a free Palestine flag in my bio. I am America first. I don't really understand what's going on. I just want to understand though.
Okay. So, going back to that, that was a particular time where that used to happen. Now, what was interesting is that the school that I went to with a couple of friends was in the heart of Tel Aviv by Dizengoff Center, which was like the first mall in Tel Aviv, one of the oldest and the first, and the biggest at that time. And we exited at the school, which is two exits from there, or maybe three. And when I got to school, this is in 97 or 90, yeah, so, 97, early 97. I had a cell phone back then because it was very common. Cell phones were very common in Israel, and that's when the phones back then were prepaid, right? So you didn't have to do the whole service thing. It's just when you talked, so it made sense. And my dad called me, and he's like, "Are you at school?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, the same line that you use," and I don't know the line. It was 215 or two, like the bus line. He's like, "Just blew up." Blah blah blah. So he was scared of that, obviously, and I stopped going to the school after that. Right? He didn't want me to take the bus anymore. It was just too risky. But yeah, that's that. It was new to me, the culture. Like, I didn't understand, because living in Israel, you saw a lot of construction workers, and those type of workers. You saw them coming from out of Israel, Gaza, West Bank, whatever. They'd come in, do their thing, go back, right? But then also you have 25% of the population in Israel are what you would call Palestinian Israelis, right? Born there, citizenship, whatever. They have the same rights as any Israeli does. But I remember asking my dad about that. And I told him, I was like curious, like what goes on in Gaza. And, we can go see it, right? Because I've only seen what I've seen in Israel and seeing
Mhm.
what's in other cities. And he says, we can't go there. I'm like, what do you mean we can't go there? He's like, there's a big sign that says literally not to people, just to Jews. You cross here, you're no longer protected, enter at your own risk. So that kind of like in my mind, and remember, I grew up knowing about the Holocaust, right? And my family was not directly affected in the Holocaust because I'm Middle Eastern Jewish. I'm not European Jewish. Obviously, we do have friends and relatives that are. And
Now, were you ever have you ever been to any part of Palestine? Like I forget the West Bank. Have you ever been there?
I've never been to West Bank. No. Those places are really not safe for
If you're
Jews.
Israeli, yeah.
Yeah, or for Jews or any Israelis. It's not recommended to go. But I don't think it's not think I know that Arabs that come in from other places, no matter where, they don't have issues in Israel, right? Is there some crazies, right wings and stuff like that? Yeah, you'll get that, maybe cursing, yelling, blah blah blah. But no one is going to go and strap something on their stomach or take a gun and shoot them. It just does not happen, right? So that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. So what we're going to talk about tonight, guys, I wanted to allow Nick to explain his background because it's important to understand. We're going to give an update to what's happening in Iran and Israel. I have this clip that I'm going to play. It explains the latest of what happened on Friday evening, and I'll play the clip and then we'll discuss it.
Go for it.
On News Nation, we have breaking news on our watch. Israel is retaliating against the extreme Islamist regime in Iran. Remember, Iran launching 200 ballistic missiles. Really, it's the regime. You can't blame the people of Iran. The regime launching 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. Indiscriminate targeting, October 1st. Pictures tell the story. Iranian state media confirms at least 5 explosions occurred near Iran's capital of Tehran. The capital city is home to close to 10 million, making that one city more populated than all of Israel. The problem is, it is also home to missile storage and launch sites, and Israel appears to be targeting those, and that is the word from the IDF. This is a bold move for the much smaller Israel. The regime is 3 times the military personnel, 10 times the overall population, and lots of land to hide as it is the 18th largest country. More importantly, it has also developed and sourced thousands of rockets like the 200 it sent towards Israel on October 1st. So Israel is once again defending herself against a much bigger, more powerful, and poisonous enemy. It is, of course, the extreme Islamist regime there that is the head of the snake attacking Israel directly and through its proxies in Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, and elsewhere. The two countries are situated about 1,000 miles apart, meaning the attack may be by long-range missile. Israel does have fighter jets that could reach, but my understanding is that would require complicated
So, Amanda, can you tell everyone, because you're the geopolitical expert, Miss, I don't know that, but you corrected him on a name. So tell everyone what happened over the weekend and the significance.
I can go more broad too. Or okay, let me start with this. I think a lot of people in America especially view this conflict, because it's by design that people view this conflict this way, as a conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And it's really not correct to understand it that way. This is a conflict between Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is the extremist government of Iran, and its proxies. So Israel was founded in 1948. A lot of people have problems with that. A lot of people like to go back and debate the history of Israel should not have been founded, or this or that, or whatever the case. People can get into those arguments all day. What they leave out from those arguments is that Israel has existed for 76 years and has offered a sovereign state to the Palestinians, I believe, 5 times, which they have turned down and rejected each time. So Palestine could be a free state with 0 Israelis in the land if it accepted any of those 5 deals. They won't. What happened in the 1970s?
What were in the deals, though, for them not to accept it?
I can tell you why I think they don't accept it.
Yeah, I want to know your opinion.
Basically, they have a lot of policy proposals they want in these deals. They'll go back to something in 1948. Basically, the Arabs states as a whole fought like 3 wars against Israel. So they fought the war in 1948, which they were not expected to lose or to win, but they lost. Then they fought another one in 1967. Then they fought another one in 1973. The armistice lines from the 1948 war, like basically the lines where they stopped fighting, those are now called the 67 borders. And a lot of the time they want to say, well, we want to go back to 67 borders. Well, in 1967, up until 1967, the West Bank and Jerusalem, which is now the capital of Israel, was under the control of Jordan. They'll say, well, we want a Palestinian state, but we want it to be 67 borders. Israelis have lived in Jerusalem and called it its capital since 1967. So you'll hear that. Oh, well, we just want to go back to that. It's not really doable today. Another thing that they'll say is we want right of return. So if you want an Israeli state and a Palestinian state, Israelis to be the majority, which still, like Nick said, has Palestinians living there who have full rights, full citizenship. You can't allow all of the Palestinians to go back to Israel and say, like, that would screw that up. Basically, when they say, well, we want right of return, they're saying we don't want Israel to exist because they want to immigrate to Israel and then basically through democratic elections make Israel no longer a state that protects Jews, really. But so the significance of this latest attack in 1979, there was a revolution in Iran, which took the Shah out of power, and it installed this very brutal Islamist regime, like the Ayatollah and all of this stuff. People get into it. It's all America's fault. I think that that's overblown too. Since 1979, they have funded proxies to basically get rid of Israel. They say on behalf of the Palestinians, what they really want is control of Jerusalem because that would make them more competitive against Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, who are extremely basically prosperous. And it used to be that like Cairo and Damascus and Egypt and Syria were like the centers of culture and political discourse in the Middle East. Then that kind of shifted after they lost the war of 1973. And now it kind of is all on the Gulf states, but Iran wants to be a player in that too. So they take, in my opinion, an easy conflict to exploit, which is the Palestinian conflict, because there is a conflict with like a bunch of people who are stateless. And they say, oh, well, we're doing it for them. But really they're doing it because they want control of Jerusalem because that'll make them competitive against the Saudis. Anyways, what's really insane is that they've funded all of these proxies for the last, really since they took over in 1979. Hezbollah is the most well-known one. It's incredible, and it's all over the world. It's not just in southern Lebanon. They have a presence in Syria. They have a presence in Latin America. They have cells here. They get arrested in Europe trying to carry out terror attacks. So they're all over. They also have the Houthis down in Yemen. They have a bunch of Shia militias between Iraq and Syria.
Pretty much,
sorry.
Iran has now become bin Laden. They're funding these, from what you're saying, they're funding these small terrorist groups. And they're just like, okay, we'll give you the guns, we'll give you the weapons to fight Israel to distract what they're doing. Is that correct, what I'm hearing?
Yeah, pretty much. And not only Israel, they also, like the Houthis' main enemy is the Saudis. The Shia militias, or like the militias in Syria and Iraq were fighting anti-Assad regime factions within Syria. So, I mean, like it gets more complicated. It's not just about Israel, but that's kind of the main thing that people in the West focus on. What's really insane about the last 6 months of this conflict is, for the first time, even though people like me and Nick have known for this whole time, I'm sure, that this is really a fight between Israel and Iran. Iran attacked Israel first directly in April. And now again, they did so at the beginning of October. And so Israel responded to the attack in April by taking out a couple of their air defenses and saying, hey, look, we could take out some of your nuclear facilities if we wanted to, but we won't. Then they attacked again with the largest ballistic missile attack in the history of the world, which is really dangerous for other Arab countries. It's really dangerous for Iraq and Jordan because they don't have the Iron Dome like Israel has to protect its citizens from these incoming rockets. And so Israel struck back, and they basically left the Islamic regime of Iran like completely naked. So they took out all of their air defense systems. They took out all of their factories where they build these ballistic missiles. Iran also manufactures drones that they sell to Russia to use against Ukraine. So that'll have that geopolitical impact as well. But they took out a really important like secret police type establishment, these ballistic missile centers and their air defenses, so Israel could attack again. That's kind of where we're at now. Sorry, that's a long
What I
explanation.
want to understand, if Iran is the focus, why did 30,000 Palestinians have to die? Because I still don't understand that, and I'm sure people watching are thinking that. And again, I'm not trying to be adversarial, but
No, that's fine. That's
yeah.
fine. So 30,000, this is like my big criticism of Israel, is Israel has known for the last 17 years that Hamas, which is another proxy of Iran, is basically building all of this infrastructure. They built a huge tunnel network, basically the size of the New York subway system, underneath all of their civilian infrastructure. And Israel's known that they're doing that and allowed them basically to do that because it's their state. They can do whatever they want, thinking that they would never have to go to war with them. October 7th was so awful that Israel had to go to war with them.
How did Hamas infiltrate the Iron Dome? Nick, do you know, is there an answer to that? Because if it was, I mean, I literally have seen the bombs come through, and they don't come through. So how did those people infiltrate is what I still don't understand.
How did the people on October 7th get into Israel is your question?
Yeah.
So let's go back just to October 6th, just a little bit. October 6th, there was a ceasefire. So all this screaming and yelling that you hear, ceasefire, there was a ceasefire October 6th. Okay, let's get that out the way. Number two, the same people that I brought up that I told you they come in from Gaza every day into Israel to work, they were basically spies for the Hamas or for the Iranian regime, whoever you want to point out, that were working in this village. Now, the village that got hit the most, if you want it like to kind of interpret it to American words, they were liberals. These were Israelis that lived in kibbutzes that were not right-wing, right? They were very liberal. They're the ones that worked closely with Palestinians, shared food with them, peace, blah, 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 didn't like the IDF, all that stuff. Those people that went into those homes provided maps, intel, information, whatever you, a spy, basically a spy, right? Provided all that information to Iranian regime and that's how they were able to do it. Now, as far as how they got into Israel that day, there was a lot of things that happened. First of all, you're hearing anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 terrorists came in at the same time. I don't know exact numbers, but that's a good estimate. October 6th, again, there was stuff going in the middle of Israel and the north of Israel that kind of deterred the attention of the IDF. And I don't know if we want to say the Mossad, to the north of Israel, in the middle of Israel, kind of like, you know.
Nick, what's the Mossad for people watching that may not know? Because a lot of people don't know what it is.
Equivalent to the CIA, KGB for Russia, our intel.
Thank you.
You know, no problem. Sorry. And
I know what it is, but I just want to. A lot of people don't know, so I just want to make sure.
So that was the start of it. Now there's arguments. Now I have family in Israel, so I always question how did they do it. Obviously, you see bulldozers taking down the gates, their fences, 15, 20 feet high. Now, a lot of people in Israel, they always criticize Bibi and previous governments of how they were treating the people in Gaza. When I mean that, not treating bad, they were trying to their diplomacy with Gaza was to make it somewhere by for them raising capital and becoming kind of like, you know, able to sponsor themselves and becoming like a little haven, right? Kind of like what Israel has become. And I say that because when Israel left Gaza in 2005, so when people say, you know, free Palestine, it's been free since 2005, if we want to clarify that.
How has it been free since 2005?
Israel pulled out. All their armies, all their people left the city of Gaza and said, we will no longer allow our troops to die. We want to try to do this the best way we can. So we will create a border and we won't have a presence in Gaza. That's the equivalent of, you know, them being free and doing what they want. So now when you say that, people say it's an open air prison, you know, so there's whatever you say, they have something else to say of it. But what I say, has anybody ever looked at Egypt's border to see what their border looks like compared to Israel? It's Trump's favorite border. It's that beautiful and that.
I'm gonna look it up. Keep going.
Look it up.
I want to see.
Because that's what
While you're talking.
That's what they do to keep the Palestinians out. If Israel was to build a wall like that, it'd be the most racist country in the world. But let's fast forward. So when they
wow, I found it.
Impressive.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. I never knew what this looked like.
The border between Egypt and Gaza is the most high-tech border in the world. But what's funny, so Egypt borders both Gaza and Israel. As soon as they get out of the Gaza portion, it's like a fence. Like, it's like nothing. But the border for Gaza looks like that.
Wow.
That's a hell of a border.
Yeah, for real. But keep going.
Okay, so when they went in, Israel provided them to give them a jump start. I don't remember if it was 30 or 300 greenhouses. Maybe Amanda knows the exact number. Do you know the number?
I don't. A lot of them.
Yeah, and those greenhouses provided millions and millions and millions of dollars for them to get a jump start to their economy. The first thing they did when they got in there, they burned every greenhouse. Okay? So that is kind of, no matter what Israel does or doesn't do, they're always going to be the bad guy. And I want to jump into when you were talking about all the casualties, 30,000 casualties. I'm not minimizing that. I'm not saying it's more. I'm not saying it's less, because we don't know the exact numbers. What I will say is that more people in Gaza have been born than actually have been unalived in the last year. The reason I say that, not because it's a proud statement, is because of the word genocide. The word genocide has been used every day. Israel is doing arguably the worst job of genocide anybody has ever done, if you're truly, really wanting to do a genocide. Israel has every superior advantage that you can think of if it comes to ground, air, if they were really wanting to do that. Every Western leader in the army has said Israel's ratio of terrorists to civilians is the best it's ever seen.
For an urban conflict. For a normal urban war, it's like 9 to 1, civilians to 1 combatant, or 10 to 1. I believe the U.S. campaign in Mosul was 14 to 1. In Gaza, it's 1 to 1 or 2 to 1.
It's 2 to 1 to 1 to 1. Very fair, because I've been hearing both. So you hear that. Now, I go back to, first of all, anybody that dies or has to die, I'm not saying it's not tragic. It's tragic. But what can you do? To say that Israel has to argue all the time why they have to do what they're doing, and then they give explanations and videos. First of all, I've never seen a war in my life that's got so many Middle Eastern experts, and everybody knows how to fight a war, and everybody's telling Israel how to fight a war. But, for example, if we just go prior back to October 6th, if we just take Yemen, if we just, the neighbors, I'm not going too far. I'm not going to Africa. I'm just taking the neighbors surrounding Israel, Yemen, Syria, Jordan, all these places. You have near 1 million people that have died, young, old, stuff like that. We haven't heard one protest. We haven't heard one person say anything in Senate, not one person campaigning. It's only when Israel defends itself that people have a hard time with. That's how I see it. Out of the 220 countries that we have in the world, only one country people are talking about that should not exist and should not be there and should not protect itself. Another country that's not too old is Pakistan. Look at Pakistan's history. Look at Israel's history.
Okay. Are you an American citizen?
Yes.
You are, correct?
Yes.
So you're able to vote.
Correct.
So what candidate do you think currently is the best for what's going on right now in the Middle East? Neither?
Yeah, Trump.
You're breaking up, son.
Trump.
Oh, Trump. And why is that?
He's the best for the Palestinians.
And
But
I think
no,
he
yeah.
doesn't like seeing
I
bloodshed.
totally agree with you, and I will tell you, my family in the Middle East is saying the same thing. So that's why I would like his opinion. Who does he think is the best and why?
I definitely do think Trump, because Trump brings a certain element of people don't know what he might do or how he's going to react. For example,
Right.
Joe Biden has been wishy-washy, right? He supports Israel one day, he talks about this the next day.
He's a flip-flopper.
Exactly, exactly. When you have the Iranian regime releasing a video of how they're going to kill Trump, or unalive Trump, sorry, in Mar-a-Lago, and that came out on
Right.
Twitter. It's like an AI thing, and that is so embarrassing for Americans and for like someone like Biden not to say anything about that. Is to me is completely laughable. To make a
Nick,
video.
you're breaking up again.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
While you get in a better spot, Amanda, why do you think they're good for Palestine?
So I think the worst thing that can happen right now is this being a long war. And unfortunately, because the Biden administration has dragged this war out, it's created a long war. If we look at the casualty numbers, like I think you said 30,000, I hear some people say 40,000. 17,000 of those the IDF believes are Hamas combatants. So that's one thing. But
okay, well that's good.
Yeah. So that's
not all civilians. No, not even.
Yeah, it's not all civilians. But the other thing you have to look at is like Hamas, being that they controlled everything in the Gaza Strip, they're like the way to win the war, because they can't compete with Israel militarily, is to say that it's really, really, really awful, to get public opinion to turn on Israel so they end the war before they meet their objectives, which is taking Hamas out of power. So they've actually intercepted, I believe British intelligence put this out, they intercepted letters that went between Yahya Sinwar, who was the leader of Hamas, he's now been eliminated, basically complaining that there were not enough there were not enough casualties because Israel wasn't unaliving enough people. So they are incentivized to cook those numbers, make them a little bit larger. And if you look at the casualty ratio in Lebanon and the West Bank, because they're also acting in the West Bank right now and in Lebanon, the civilian casualty numbers are significantly higher in Gaza than they are in the West Bank or in Lebanon. Is that because the numbers are accurate in Lebanon or the West Bank, we won't know. But the reason I think is Trump would be much better is because he wouldn't keep forcing them to pause the war. So right now, even if people are not being unalived, they're having to live in this makeshift camp on the beach of Gaza called the Al-Mawasi humanitarian corridor. There's millions of people packed in there. It's like nobody's arguing that life is fun for them right now. You know what I mean? Israel the Biden administration basically told Israel, you need to cease fire for Ramadan, the month of Ramadan in last February. And they didn't really pick back up, operations until May. So they got a 3-month ceasefire, the Palestinians did, where they couldn't really go home. But the objectives had not yet been met. And then the thing that Israelis get really pissed off about is they didn't get anything in return. So they didn't get any of their hostages returned. And they've recovered the bodies of hostages. There's 5 Americans being held hostage right now by Hamas, by the way.
I got a question. Speaking of the hostages, do you guys this is going to be controversial, I'm going to say, so please don't be offended. But how do we know how they all were unalived? Could it have been from any IDF bombs? That's my biggest thing that I have questions on.
I'll tell you. Okay, so they have video footage from the festival and from the kibbutzim of people of some of the hostages being brought into Gaza, and some of them were brought in not alive. So they unalived them in Israel, and then they took the body hostage to try and exchange them to get Palestinian prisoners out.
So you're saying that some of them were unalived before, and I heard that some of them were unalived from fire, from the back. Is that true?
Some were. 3 were unalived in friendly fire, I believe, last December. That happened, and then there have been a lot of claims that Israel has airstruck areas where hostages were. I guess it's the Israeli policy right now that if there's any suspicion that there are hostages there, they are not allowed to strike it. And they have to go through 4 layers of approval with lawyers to make sure that their airstrike is like copacetic with international law. So it is absolutely possible that they like hostages have been unalived in airstrikes, but they go through a lot to like make sure like the narrative being perpetuated online is that Israel's just like dropping bombs left and right wherever they feel like with like no regard, and that's not happening. So another thing is when you look at how many buildings have been blown up, like if you look at these photos from Gaza, because it's horrific. 40% of the buildings in Rafah were rigged up with IEDs. So like
right, I've heard that.
So, like,
I've heard that, and they're in the communities, and that's what people need to understand, that they were infiltrating
very condensed and populated areas.
Yeah. So like when you look at how many buildings are like being bombed, a lot of that's bombs planted by Hamas that they were hoping would go off when an IDF soldier entered that building. So like that's that kind of thing too, where it's like I hear this narrative a lot that like Israel's trying to make Gaza unlivable so that they have to go somewhere else. I think, and like that's why they're bombing so many places. A lot of these bombs were planted by Hamas.
But why did they vote against the UN agency ban? What was that about? Because that's the thing that people are very angry at this week for them. I'm reading an article at the UN. This is CNN, so this is like mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying that the US called the strike in Beit Leha horrifying, while the UN Human Rights Office spokesperson Jeremy Lawrence said it was one of the deadliest single strikes in Gaza in nearly 3 months. And then they're saying that there were injured UN peacekeepers. So that's late. And then also the UN agency ban. Do you know what that is? And can you tell everyone what that is, Amanda?
UNRWA is the UN specific agency for Palestinians. So UNRWA has locations everywhere there are Palestinian refugees, and it's weird to call them refugees 76 years after the War of 48, but they're still like their descendants are still called refugees. UNRWA essentially is the governing arm of the Palestinian territories. So like they have a government, like they have Mahmoud Abbas in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. In Ramallah, they have Hamas in Gaza, but like they don't really do anything. Like they collect money and most of it, the leadership pockets themselves, but they're not really responsible for anything like governing wise. UNRWA does it all, which is an UN agency. The problem this too, but like a lot of because UNRWA is so integrated into like that society, a lot of Hamas people are running around with UNRWA IDs or something. Yeah. So what'll happen is, and they do that because if you flash an UNRWA ID in one of these checkpoints, they'll let you through. Now, that's putting, if a terrorist is carrying an UNRWA ID to try and get in somewhere, that's like putting the entire UN peacekeeping force at risk because it's kind of makes it a legitimate target. But this is like kind of one of those complicated things. And like, again, this would go back to like my biggest criticism of Israel is like they've allowed for this system to be in place. And now they're trying to prosecute a really hard to fight war. And people are mad at Israel in every fashion because Israel's like, because it does sound weird when Israel's like, well, everyone there's a terrorist, but it's kind of true. Because this has been like not everybody in Gaza, but like
85% approval rating.
Sorry?
85% approval rating of Hamas.
Yeah, it depends on the poll, but like when we're talking about like, okay, so Israel struck this area and they happen to have an UNRWA ID. Well, there could be more to the story is the point I'm trying to make. It's like, yeah, it could be an UNRWA teacher or it could be an UNRWA teacher who's also a part of Hamas. You know what I mean?
Let me make a quick point. Thank you, Amanda. But let me make a quick point. Israel has provided so much footage and cameras of hospitals, ambulance, cars, doctor's office, schools, with missiles, with bombs, with every kind of weapon that you can think of. And the hostages that come back, when they talk to them, where were you living? I was living at this civilian's house, that civilian's house. They go and find out who's the civilian. He's a doctor. This one's a school teacher. There's nothing surprising here. This is a different war. This is not Nazi Germany. This is not, America with Afghanistan, which is kind of similar, but not the same. Definitely didn't get the same coverage, right? It's a whole different thing. And I think people don't understand the mindset of the people that live there compared to here. I think that a lot of people that live here or in the West, they think that all people are the same, all people value the same and have the same belief system. That is not true there. And from someone that lived here and there, I can tell you it's not the same at all.
A lot of Israelis are upset right now because they want the hostages back and they're starting to blame the government. Is that true, Nick?
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So the leader of Hamas, the one that was unalived, he was a prisoner of Israel. A lot of people don't know this. I'm sure Amanda does. He was a prisoner. Yeah, here, very interesting story. A prisoner of Israel that he did unalive a couple of people, a couple of different backgrounds. We'll say it that, not just Jews. Was in jail. In 2005, he had cancer. They found cancer in his brain. The Israeli doctors removed the cancer. He's cancer-free. He's still in jail. They kidnap IDF, a young man by the name of Gilad Shalit, right? That's his name? Yes. They had him 4 to 5 years. Israel ended up doing a trade with the Hamas. I believe it was 800 or 1,000.
1,200.
How much?
1,200. Or 1,100, sorry.
1,100, over 1,000 prisoners, Hamas affiliated, people that, not talking about accusations, we're talking about people that there's strong evidence that they did some stuff. We gave them in return the 1,100 prisoners, and gave them in the 1,100 prisoners, we gave him the leader of Hamas, the head of the October 7th, master plan. That's the thank you that we get. Right? We imprison him, we save his life, whatever you want to see, but that's the leader of Hamas. Now, on October 6th, we also had footage of Sinwar going from his home to the cave that Amanda was talking about, the underground bunkers, just with his kids. I believe it's 2 kids and his wife that had a Birkin bag, right? Walking down, and they just show the footage of them taking cash, taking food, because he knew what was to come. He knew that Israel was going to retaliate, and he said this in interviews, just like Amanda said, that all the Palestinian blood is well intentioned to pass the message, right?
Every martyr paves the way to Jerusalem.
Basically, right? Just like they have the 72 virgins. If you kill, that's a whole different thing.
Well, let me ask you a question, Nick. Yeah. I heard that the Abraham Accord is part of why this started. Is that true? What is your opinion on it? Do you think that was the start of this? Because I heard that as an argument today on a live where people are trying to, again, they love to blame Trump for everything, that they're trying to say that this was the start of this. Amanda, I'm going to kick it to Amanda then, because I think she kind of has an answer. I mean, if you're going to go short, you can answer, but Amanda, I think, has a
well, I think it's just what you said. People want to blame Trump for everything. I think basically when I said at the beginning that the Palestinians have been offered peace 5 times and they've rejected it each time, all of the Arab governments have said we will not recognize or normalize relations with Israel until there's a Palestinian state. Well, at a certain point, if the Palestinians won't do that and they want to normalize relations because they have the same enemy as Israel, which is Iran, the Abraham Accords basically gave them a way to kind of be allied with Israel and really just get intelligence about what Iran is doing without there being a Palestinian state. And they tried to offer them statehood one last time at the UN under like Jared Kushner, and they wouldn't take it. And so the Gulf states normalized Sudan, Morocco normalized with Israel, and then Saudi Arabia was on its way too. I think it is true that eventually they wanted to, there was going to be some sort of attack in response to the Abraham Accords, because Iran does not want these countries to normalize.
Amanda, the chat's asking what's the Abraham Accord. Can you briefly describe what it is?
The Abraham Accords was a Middle East peace plan between Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Sudan, and Morocco, and Israel. Without a Palestinian state, like I just said, they recognized Israel, because most Arab countries don't recognize Israel right now. They recognized Israel, and in exchange, they can exchange like either monetary things or diplomacy, intelligence, anything like that. So I think that there was always going to be some sort of response from Iran to the Abraham Accords, but I don't think it would have been like it was, because under Trump, basically Trump left the Islamic regime of Iran broke. Like, he had so much, and like they were not allowed to sell oil to China or anywhere. Like he put all these sanctions on them. When Biden came into office, he lifted all of those sanctions. He gave them $65 billion in sanctions relief over the last 3.5 or 4 years, including $10 billion in sanctions waivers after October 7th. And all of that money went to funding Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Shia militias.
That's a good thing that you bring that up, Amanda. Do you think them releasing that money, do you think that they use that money to fund this? Because that's what the right has been saying. And tell me why. Because, one thing I don't like what's going on in the last 6 months is people just like to throw things out and they don't have facts to back it up. And I like that you guys are bringing facts to back up these things. And again, please don't be offended by my questions. These are questions that I hear, and I want to be able to give facts. You guys,
I would rather answer the questions you're asking, Nora. I like people, if they have those questions, they're everywhere in culture right now. Like, you have a right to get an answer to the question. So please, like, I'm happy to answer them. I absolutely think the sanctions relief money was used for that, because money's fungible. So at the end of the day, if the Islamic regime is broke and they need to do basics to keep the lights on within the regime, as soon as they get a flood of $10 billion in cash, even if that exact $10 billion is looked over by Qatar, who is just as corrupt as Iran, and they say, well, but this specific $10 billion, but money is fungible. So then they can free up other money that was allocated elsewhere within the regime to fund these proxies. And they always fund the proxies when they're broke. But it was to the point under Trump that Hezbollah, which was the crown jewel of the Iranian proxy network, was fundraising, or the Houthis were fundraising for Hezbollah. I mean, Hezbollah had the military capability of a mid-sized European military that was being built occupying southern Lebanon and Dahia, which is a southern suburb of Beirut. And I agree with you, King Gibbs. Yeah, the U.S. is the issue there, because we were trying so hard to get into the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that we said, well, Iran will only do it if we give them all this money. They'll only enter into this if we're really, really, really nice to them. No, they don't work that way. Nick will tell you, the mentality is different. They don't respect us when we give them everything and ask for nothing in return. It is the stupidest thing I've ever witnessed in my life. And again, also, if we had not done the Afghanistan withdrawal, where 13 Americans lost their lives.
We funded what people don't realize is we gave Afghanistan guns and weapons to fight Russia at the time.
$90 billion. And those weapons were used when Hamas came into Israel in October 7th. Those same weapons that we're talking about that were left, that was too expensive to bring back, were used against Israel. Those same weapons.
It's the most absurd thing in the world.
My question now is, why should America care about what's going on in Israel? What is the reason why we should care? Nick, I'll let you go first, because you have dual citizenship.
So I think, first of all, that Israel and America have a lot in common. If it's the way our values are, how we treat people, democracy, all those things, we have a lot in common with that kind of culture. With the Americans, Israelis, they share a lot of the same things. And also for America to have its greatest ally, even though it's been rocky a little bit, I still say we're the greatest ally to them in the Middle East, is essential. They have to know, for Americans, or in the same way over here, they have to know what is going on. When 9/11 happened, do you think they didn't call up the Israeli government and the Mossad to get some intel on, things that they were going to do when they went into Iraq? Of course they did. They worked with them. They still work together closely. I think as Americans and Judeo-Christian values that we have, there's a difference between good and evil. And I think that Israel is in the forefront right now of fighting that war. When we talk about Israel and Gaza, so if Israel and Gaza is having their issues right now, what does Lebanon have to do with it, right? Because supposedly they're doing it for Palestine. So that's the same way as if Israel attacking Iran for no reason, because there are people in Iran that are, let's just say, being unalived for whatever reason or that reason. That's not a reason to do that. And over here, do you think America is playing both sides? I think Joe Biden is. I don't think that has always been the American policy. Americans from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, great politicians, always said, and this is not to flex, that Israel has always been their greatest investment.
So now I'm going to put something out there for the chat, and I'm going to make it personal. Trump has very interesting situation here. He has son-in-laws on both sides. His one son-in-law is Jared Kushner, who is of Jewish descent, and many people may not know this. This is why when people call him a racist, I'm like, you sound so damn dumb. His other son-in-law is Lebanese, and he has a baby on the way with his daughter, Tiffany. So do you think he's going to be fair? Because, Trump is going to be in the middle with this situation here. And his other son-in-law is heavily connected with Lebanon, still, I heard. Not in the way of saying he's connected with the terrorists, but he has business dealings there.
Well, Lebanon is a majority Christian country, or it was founded as one. And it doesn't historically have a problem with Israel to the same extent as Jordan and Egypt. Right. And Jordan and Egypt have peace now too. Lebanon and Israel haven't normalized their relations really because of Hezbollah. Hezbollah also, by the way, is the terror group besides Al-Qaeda with the most U.S. blood on its hands. We just had the anniversary of the Marine barracks bombing, where 241 Americans were killed in the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1982. A lot of Americans don't know that. We never went after these guys. All of the guys that planned that.
Why do you think that the left has taken on this? We care so much.
They don't know. Fuad Shukra, all these Hezbollah guys, we didn't have we could have gone after them, and we just and it was Reagan. So I love Reagan, but he tucked his tail between his legs and left, and we didn't go after these guys. It was Israel who fought that war for us that we really should have fought, honestly. Hezbollah has cells, like I said.
Can you explain to everybody how the Lebanese government basically got infiltrated and why the Hezbollah has so much power? Because I don't think people know that.
So Lebanon was founded, there was the Palestinian Mandate, which was the British Mandate, which became Jordan, the Palestinian territories in Israel. The Syrian Mandate was to the north of that after the Ottoman Empire fell, and they created Lebanon, which was a barely Christian majority country, and then Syria, which is obviously Syria today. Lebanon was 52% Christian, Maronite Christians, indigenous to the Middle East. And then now it's all about a third. So it's a third Christian, a third Shia Muslim, and a third Sunni Muslim. And then the rest is Druze, which is an ethno-religious minority that kind of is Shia Islam, but they consider themselves Arab, but not Muslim. It's interesting. The Druze I could talk about all day too. After the Lebanese Civil War, which a lot of people blame on the Palestinians, actually, because the Palestinians tried to set up a state within a state in Lebanon, they basically, there was a 15-year brutal civil war where between 100,000 and 150,000 civilians were killed. Some combatants too, obviously, which is insane because we just hit, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it just hit 100,000 unalived in this conflict in the last 76 years with the Gaza war. Only about 100, in the whole 76 years, about 100,000 people have been unalived. In the 15-year Lebanese civil war period, it was like 150,000, which is just interesting. And it's a smaller country with like a smaller population. But after the Lebanese civil war, that is right when the Islamic regime came to power in Iran. They started funding Shias all over the Middle East, some of the Lebanese Shias, wow. And they basically created this militant group, but state within a state in Lebanon, where they're like the power of Hezbollah made it so there couldn't be a president of Lebanon for the last 2 years.
And I want to play this clip where Kamala Harris talks about the October 7th attack, and I'm just going to play the clip.
Okay.
Is it that you could lose the election?
Well, it is undeniable that it is something that everyone is aware of what is happening there. I speak publicly all the time about the fact that there are so many tragic stories coming from Gaza, and of course, the first in this phase of everything that has happened, the first most tragic story is October 7th. And what happened that day, and then what has happened since. And I think what's critically important as we look at this moment is, one, acknowledging the tragedy of what has happened in Gaza in terms of the extraordinary number of innocent Palestinians who have been killed, and taking that seriously and speaking truth about that. In addition, of course, to what I said about what happened on October 7 in terms of 1,200 innocent Israelis being slaughtered, women being horribly raped. And then fast forwarding to today with the killing of Sinwar, this creates an opening that I believe we must take full advantage of to dedicate ourselves to ending this war and bringing the hostages home.
But it's not working so far.
You know what? Listen, as it relates to the issues in the Middle East and in particular in that region, it has never been easy. But that doesn't mean we give up, okay? It is always going to be difficult. It does not mean we give up. We can't give up.
So my thing is, the question I want to ask you guys, what is the future going to look like at this point, and what involvement is America going to have? She gave more word salad. It's not clear what can't give up means. She, I understand it's very sad what happened, and I'm not taking from that. But again, there's no plan on her end to make it clear on where her position is on it. Nick, what do you think her genuine position is, and what do you think our future is going to be if she becomes the next president?
I think she's less pro-Israel than Joe Biden. That is for sure. If you ask the people of Israel, the Democratic Party, this has nothing to do with Israel, but the Democratic Party has turned their backs to the Jews, and hopefully we'll see that in the votes. If you have, for example, if she would have picked Shapiro instead of Waltz, she probably would have won. But the Democratic Party does not like Jews. They don't even want them in the party. That's what's happening now. And that's a fact. That's a fact. Because he's very presidential. And I'm a conservative Republican, and I'm saying he looks and he talks and represents himself to be presidential. But yes, I do think if you're talking about the people in Israel, or me in particular, I don't think she's pro-Israel. I don't know what that means as far as if another thing breaks out, if she will do an embargo, even though she's entertained that. What happens then? Then does Israel have to use more lethal weapons to kill more people instead of, better equipment to kill less people? I don't know. But I can tell you this. For the people of Israel, someone like me or my family that lived in Israel before October 7th, we were more optimistic about a future with them. How that looked, I don't know.
Who?
With the Palestinian people.
Okay.
We were
I
more
mean, because like when you think of it, like y'all are like cousins, like most Middle East. You get what I'm saying? You guys are Middle Eastern. Like
Correct.
That's what the hardest thing for me is, and why I don't understand this whole. I understand there's hundreds of years behind it, but I think again, she said this good. The British is at the center of this. A lot of this has to do with the Europeans that had a hand in this. So I don't understand why can't we move forward. Yeah, you shake your head, but
well,
they had a hand in some of this.
No. I mean, okay. I don't even think it's correct to blame the British anymore. I mean, if we want to blame someone, why don't we blame the Bush administration, who forced the Israelis to allow there to be an election in Gaza in 2005, where they elected Hamas. And then they fought a brutal civil war where they unalived all of the Fatah opposition, and then have ruled Gaza with an iron fist ever since. I mean, that to me is more.
Is there an end in sight?
I think there's totally an end in sight, but I think the few things that need to happen is Israel needs to fully prosecute the war. We can't do this endless ceasefire thing. We used to fight wars where, like, this is like kind of the awful thing about wars is like you need to fight until your enemy surrenders. You need your you need the enemy to be so to value their life over pursuing whatever they wanted politically. We need Hamas to no longer want to pursue their goals in the Gaza Strip, either by surrendering or by unaliving the leadership, quite frankly. And that's a horrible thing that I'm a Christian. I don't want to unalive a bunch of people, but that's how wars have to happen. And that's how just war theory that derives from Christian tradition also teaches us, right? The other wars are able to be fought and must happen, right? Or otherwise evil will be done unto us. I think that if between a Kamala and a Trump thing, I think what's interesting is that Kamala, her husband's Jewish, and they're part of the crew in America that hates Bibi Netanyahu and wants
they are.
Yeah, wants the left-wing leadership to take over.
And I thought to myself, you think that these people seriously, would they it's the biggest oxymoron.
Well, but it's weird because so Netanyahu maybe is going more hard in Gaza than I don't know what you would say, Nick, about who are the other ones, Yair Lapid or any of these Benny Gantz.
There's a lot of opposition claiming that he's prolonging the war because he has court dates, he has this, he has that.
They keep saying that he's doing it because of Trump. They want to make something. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just telling you what the left is saying.
But let me just tell you the equivalent, the beautiful equivalent, the exact equivalent is Trump. Because the way the left paints out Trump here is the same thing the left in Israel does to Bibi. What to believe exactly, we don't know. But everything you hear on media from the left, CNN, MSNBC, all those people, they have all these things, Russian collusion, January 6th, this, that. It never ends, right? And you don't know what to believe or not. That's the same thing about the left. The same thing in Bibi, But I'll tell you this, Bibi, one of his, things his legacy, he wants to be remembered before October 7th was safety. That was one of them, right? Capitalism and safety. Obviously, this happening under his watch is not good, right?
No.
I mean,
they're mad. Your people are mad at him.
Of course they are, because they feel because the close relations that Israel has with America, they have let go of the gas. They have done defense first. Right. And that has trained the people of Israel to, you know what, you're going to punch me. I'm just going to block it. And I'm not going to return the punch, return the favor, whatever. And that has created a different kind of culture in Israel. You got to understand, before October 7th, we were getting rockets every day into Israel and nothing happened, right? It was kind of you just have to deal with it. If you want to live in Israel and you want to have a country, you don't want to go to war, just accept it, right? No other country has to accept it, just Israeli people, right? And that's why a lot of people are mad at him, because he did take too much. Again, how things happen exactly with October 7th, that they were able to do as much as they did for as many hours as they did, is mind-boggling. In the
you had a good point, Nick. They had people there sneaking them in. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Well, they had maps from the people there. They had maps,
right? People giving them information, right?
Right. The retaliation of Israel and the IDF was slow. Okay, I'm telling you that. I'm Israeli, and I'm telling you that. But now a new I don't know if you saw it, Amanda. A new documentary came out about the people, the first responders, not ambulance, cops and stuff like that were fighting the war until the IDF came in. That's a side that I didn't know, and I didn't fully watch the documentary.
Say that again, Nick. You broke up. They did what?
Once the breach of October 7th happened, the IDF took about 5 to 6 hours totally contained and respond.
Right.
Right. So, but what we didn't know is that there were first responders, police, and other people that were basically in war, shooting these people until basically backing up the IDF until the IDF came in. So a lot of people had the thought that, okay, 6 hours, Hamas did what they did and nobody did anything. That's what I thought, right? Until I saw this part of this documentary showing that people in the village, cops, all these people, civilians and cops and all these people were shooting at them, trapping them, all these things. But still, for
Wow.
IDF to respond as long as it
What's
did,
the name of that documentary, Nick? I want to look it up.
it's, you know what? It's on Israeli TV. It's on Channel 12. I don't know because, again, I didn't see it. I just saw the commercial for it, and then I saw the first minute. I have 3 kids, so I don't get time to watch TV, right? They don't, they won't.
Relate.
I'm pro-life, so yeah, 3 kids. So so they I didn't get to see it, but I will find it. I don't know. I'm sure it'll be translated one day, but it was very interesting because that was a lot of questions around that. A lot of people also said that I don't know what they're called, but they sit in a tower in Israel watching over the Gaza strips. I don't know if they're called people. They have like goggles and they kind of watch everything that comes into Gaza. I don't know
Yeah,
what
like the what? Yeah, I know what you're
watch
talking about.
command,
Like the
not watch,
Watchmen.
but yeah. So there are
Yeah.
like 20 females or 18, somewhere around there. And supposedly they called it in and they said, hey, this happened. And because I guess the claims were so crazy that they were coming in thousands and in tractors, they didn't believe them at first. And these are the women that most of them got unalived. By the time,
Really?
yeah. I'm sure you
So
can.
what? Okay, so if they called it in, then Nick, I mean, it sounds like a bigger. I mean, Amanda, I'll let you respond because I can tell you want to say something. So
I did a
go ahead.
podcast episode with a former intel officer on this, and he talked about how intelligence failures like this happened. But it basically October 7th was the perfect storm. Things were heating up, getting way worse in the West Bank than in Gaza. So they moved most of their their border security people to the West Bank because they thought something like this was going to happen out of the West Bank. Really, they thought that Hezbollah would do something like this, and they just recovered a huge tunnel network. If Hezbollah had done this on the same day at the same time, they would have taken thousands of hostages. I mean, they would have unalived tens of thousands of Israelis. I mean, it cannot be overstated how much worse this could have been. But they basically were underestimating Hamas. They said, well, we have a really good border security fence and nothing's ever going to happen. When you said, how did they get through the Iron Dome? Well, the Iron Dome it detects rockets in the air and then it sends up interceptor rockets to receive the rocket, kind of go up, blow up in the interceptor and then fall. It can only catch so many. It can only perceive so many. So when they launched 6,000 or 8,000 in one day,
it can be overloaded.
It couldn't catch all of those. Yeah. They also the border security cameras were all hacked at the same time. So when those girls are calling in saying, "Hey, something's happening," they go to look at their cameras, which are looking at the border. The cameras are down, and that gave them a window of time for them to sneak in using paragliders and stuff. And then,
that's the
Iron Dome for everyone.
Iron Dome, yeah. Like nobody was concerned with the border infiltration from Gaza. They thought it would come from the West Bank or the North. The other thing that you said earlier, Nora, when you said why should Americans care?
Yeah.
5 Americans being held hostage, but also Americans historically, and nobody believes this when you tell them this, but there's a really good book on this called The Ark of a Covenant. Americans cared about this conflict before Israel was a state. Americans cared about this conflict before the United States government was allied with Israel in 1973. We didn't give them weapons to help them fight in the War of Independence. We didn't give them intelligence, all of those things. Americans saw Jews returning to the Promised Land as a fulfillment of the prophecies in Revelations, but not even Isaiah, I think. in Ephesians. So that's what we Americans for a long time have like supported the Jewish return to the land. And then the other thing, if we wanted to stop now, personally, my kind of problem with stopping supporting Israel now is that it's kind of weird to stop supporting an ally in the middle of a defensive war. But the other piece of that is that if we stopped giving them the $3.4 billion subsidy for them to spend on weapons at our manufacturers every year, they would stop spending the $10 billion that they spend at our manufacturers every year, which would cost Americans jobs. If we stopped allying with them and we no longer had access to their intelligence, like I said, we all have the same, the same enemies. They just unalived all the Hezbollah guys for us. It would cost us $6 billion to build a similar intel operation in the Middle East just in the first year. So like, I know we give them funding and we give them cover at the UN and all of these things, but it really is to our benefit. And I just, again, people can have their own opinions about Israel and stuff, but like, there are benefits that just like people don't tell you. I'll tell you. Come to my channel. I'll talk about this all day.
Can I ask you another question, Amanda? Because you're changing hearts and opening minds tonight. Why is it that AIPAC has such a hand in our politics, and is that a problem? And if it's not a problem, why should we be okay with it? Because they pretty much, from what I'm hearing, control the election, and this is what I've been told. This is the argument from the left. Again, we're putting rumors out there, and we're talking about it tonight because, I mean, I think you guys are two level-headed people, and I think this is the chat wants to hear these things.
I think AIPAC has people overstate their impact on American politics. AIPAC is not the organization that lobbies the most on behalf of Israel in the United States. The one that does the most lobbying on behalf of Israel is called CUFI, Christians United for Israel. So I don't know why they say it's AIPAC.
It's easy.
Because
we know why, because of the A word or the S word.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, the A word. You can say it.
You know, so I mean, like, there's that. I also think that like AIPAC doesn't even register in the top 10 lobbying agencies. Like AARP, the NRA, all of these other lobbying. I don't know if like all of these groups spend way more on US politicians.
There is an Arab PAC too that nobody talks about. Nobody talks about.
Yeah, there's Arab PACs. I think that like at the end of the day, the majority of US politicians support Israel because of the things I just mentioned. They know it provides US jobs. I didn't even talk about all of the technology. Trump says he's going to install an Iron Dome in the United States. It would actually be Arrow, which is like the one that goes up into space, which is a really cool one to watch in action. It's way cooler than the videos you were showing. It like you can see like a bubble in space. It's really cool. We are going to install that. Would we rather create that ourselves over the United States, or would we rather buy that technology from Israel? You know what I mean? Like, our politicians, as much as they can get mad about any war that Israel's fighting, they understand the benefits of this. And I think that that's why you have lobbying groups. Also, like, I'll just say, like, AIPAC does stuff with both Republicans and Democrats. The majority, it's a bipartisan PAC. And I think if you look after the Holocaust, like, I just think that like Jewish voters especially are like very nervous about a second thing of that happening again. And they just want to have good relationships with everybody. You know what I mean? So I like that. I put on it too. I don't know if you agree with me, Nick.
I agree that this AIPAC thing is just very easy to say. They control every politician, whatever they want, they get done, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of baloney. Pharmaceutical companies, big pharma has more power than AIPAC by times 100. Okay, so let's not say that. But I mean, if we want to talk about funding, yes, does America give Israel funding? They give them a lot, but it's not. Well, first of all, if we want to talk about funding, the most funded country in the world is Gaza, which is Palestine. If you're talking about per capita, per person, nobody gets more money than them. Where does the money go to? To destroy Israel, rockets, all these subterranean things. At least Israel when they get money from America, it's to build, all the technology you see. They have the most, what is it called? Oh, sorry, I just blanked out. Like in San
They say
Francisco,
that Israel is considered the most funded country in the world from foreign aid.
no, per
And it,
capita, if you look up, it's Gaza per capita. Remember, Israel is, almost 8 or 9 million. Gaza is 2 million. So it's like 2.5 billion for Gaza. This is without all the donations from all the other countries. But if we just talk about companies that are being started and the technology, the apps in your phone, the things and all that stuff, Israel brings something to the table. Israel does things for the world: medicine, guns, weapons, technology. They're part of it all, right? If we talk about the funding, why does nobody talk about to stop funding Ukraine, right? Which is God knows how many times more than Israel. And a lot of more people are dying there, like a lot more. And I don't see anybody going to any Russian bakery and telling the owner, go back to Russia, and beating them up or something. That doesn't happen, right?
well, Nick, let me ask you a question
Yeah.
because you bring up a good topic I want to touch on tonight. The topic of anti-Semitism. Have you experienced anti-Semitism before and after this conflict?
You want okay, so I grew up in LA, never saw it, never felt it, nothing. At the age of 17, I went to Palm Springs. I don't know if you guys know, it's about 100 miles away from Los Angeles. That's the first
Desert.
time I met a redneck, a real red skinhead, 6 of them. We were in the pool, 5 of my friends and me. So we were about 6. 2 of my friends had a Star of David. These guys were in the pool. They left. They came back 10 minutes later in full gear, in full skinhead gear, boots, red, black overalls, everything. And they came down one after the other, like in a line. And they came to us and said, "Hail Hitler." And the second they said, "Hail Hitler," everything started happening, right? The fighting, tables, all that stuff. Now, that's the first time I've experienced it firsthand. And, Israelis handle anti-Semitic things a little bit different. American Jews handle it a lot different too, right? When you see all the bullying in schools and colleges and stuff like that, that is different than the way they would handle it in Israel, let's just say, or Israelis.
Did you guys know about the shooting that happened the other day in Chicago?
No,
Is
what
that the
happened?
man that got shot? I think I saw.
An Orthodox man was on his way to
Temple.
pray at synagogue, and he was shot at by an immigrant from North Africa who came up through the border illegally 2 years ago. And the guy screamed Allahu Akbar, and it is not being investigated as a hate crime. And it's not being talked about in national news. Weird. Why aren't they talking about that? There's a lot of angles here, but a lot of people would say that's anti-Semitism.
You said Chicago?
Yep.
Chicago. Yeah, I saw the video of that on TikTok, but I went to a protest not far from here where an old man died. This was back in last year, and they didn't want to do that as a hate crime too. A Palestinian confronted an old Jewish guy, yelled at him, and then kind of shoved him. The older man fell back on his head, died, right? But that happens a lot. That happens a lot when you see that. It actually, I heard of another thing in Oakland where there was an older man. You hear this every day. I'm kind of numb to it. But the only difference is now the anti-Semitic words that I hear now that I get a lot on social media is "you're a Nazi," right? Because I'm Israeli, right? "You're a Nazi. You're killing people. You're killing me." That is different than what I experienced back then because you're Jewish and stuff like that. Now I'm a Nazi, right? And let's just talk about the Democrats, how they cheapen that word Nazi and calling Trump a Nazi, right? Yeah. They have cheapened that word, and also racist, that it has no meaning, right? It's like just easy to say that you're a Nazi, you're this, you're that, which is truly sad to see because if I had a grandparent that was in the Holocaust and that experienced Adolf Hitler and his regime, that is terrible, You know, that is, you can't
Yeah,
compare that.
it's funny you mentioned that. I have a clip. I'm gonna pull it up. I'm looking for it. But there was tons of Jewish people at the rally. As a Jewish American, Nick, was it a Nazi rally in your opinion?
Oh, no.
This was at the rally.
Yeah. You know, yeah, you mean you had black people, Puerto Rican people, gay people, Jewish people. You had all of them over there. To say it's a Nazi rally, it's just crazy. You know, I mean, even the comedian, he's gay. Hinchcliffe, the one that said the Puerto Rican joke, he's gay. I mean, you had people from every walks of life. But this is what the media does. They attack him on being a fascist and a Nazi, and it worked in
Right.
2020, kind of backfiring right now on them just a little bit. But, you know, they still will use those words. They feel like that's their best policy. Like Kamala doesn't have policies. Her best line is just to attack Trump. You know, no matter what they say, her answer is Trump.
I was wondering, Nora, did that offend you from the rally? Because aren't you Puerto Rican?
No, I'm half Jamaican, half Moroccan.
Oh,
But guess
sorry.
what?
You're
It wouldn't
Jamaican.
have,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
it would not have offended me. What offends me is this woman cosplaying to be a black woman, and she doesn't even have a relationship with her Jamaican father, number one. And the rumor that he's truly Indian, and she's trying to say she's going to be the first black woman president, that offends me more. And also, what offends me is the fact that they're trying to play on the racial hate that truly does happen in this country to divide us. I've never felt more united with Americans, white Americans, Jewish Americans before than now, as we all have one goal to get her not in the White House. Because I'm sick of the racism. I'm sick of the divisiveness. I'm sick of being told because I'm part Jamaican, part Moroccan, I should vote for this party or this person. That offends me more than anything.
The Puerto Rico storyline, this has gotten more airtime than both of Trump's assassination attempts combined. They're more on the Puerto Rican joke made by a comedian 4 hours before Trump spoke than they are about people trying to unalive him. I've never seen anything like it. It's so
I've never
blatant.
seen anything like this. So we're gonna close out, guys. Amanda, I really, really appreciate you coming again. Let everybody know about your podcast and where everyone can find you.
Thank you guys so much for having me again. I really love doing this with you guys. You can find me at Amanda Talks Geopolitics, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and my ex is Amanda Talks. And don't waste this effing podcast, The Story of Megan Stoner, true crime, if you're into that. Thank you guys. And nice to meet you, Nick.
Nice to meet you too, Amanda. This was great. And I'm also just on TikTok, no YouTube, just Mr. Nick B, B-E-E, at TikTok.
Yeah, so everyone, thank you for joining us. You got to be on time because tomorrow night, 7 p.m., we're going to be talking about the Trump Joe Rogan podcast, and we're going to be comparing it to Kamala at Club Shay Shay. I don't even know. I kind of watched it. It's the best she's ever sounded. It's funny she has to go on a Black Americans podcast to sound good. She can't sound good by going to Joe Rogan because she can't talk for 3 hours. So we're going to compare it. And guys, for everyone watching, we have our official watch party next Tuesday night, 7 to 11 p.m. We would love if you guys could join us and stop in. So let me know. We can talk privately. Because I cannot wait to see all the liberals' faces when Trump wins. I mean, I am so excited. And everyone
God willing.
Yeah, last night we had a liberal on last night. He was a little unhinged. You can go back and watch it. I mean, they're getting combative, y'all. They're getting violent. Literally, I'm talking violence with their words, and I can't imagine what they're going to do after after November 5th, honey. Their heads are going to explode when Trump wins. So check it out. November 5th, our watch party. Again, thank you so much, Nick, for sharing your perspective. And again, Amanda, thank you for coming on as always. And like we always say on the new party as we close out, always vote.